Chapter 1. The Silent Child Who Loved the Invisible. Albert Einstein was born on March 14, 1879, in a city called Ulm, in Germany. His father, Hermann Einstein, ran a small electrical business. His mother, Pauline, loved music and was very intelligent. From the beginning, Albert was different. When he was born, people in the family were worried. His head was unusually large, and for the first few years, he barely spoke. In fact, he didn't start speaking full sentences until he was 9 years old. People thought something might be wrong with him. But Albert was just thinking, deeply, quietly. He wasn't interested in normal things like games or running around. He loved to sit alone, build things with blocks, and think. One day, his father gave him a simple magnetic compass. The needle always pointed in the same direction, no matter how Albert turned it. This mystery blew his mind. Why does the needle move? What force is making it happen? That small compass started a fire inside Albert's brain. He became obsessed with invisible forces, like gravity, magnetism, and light. At school, however, he didn't do very well. Why? Because he hated the way school worked. Teachers gave orders. Students had to memorize answers. Einstein didn't want to memorize. He wanted to understand. And when he asked too many questions, teachers said, "You'll never amount to anything." In fact, one teacher told him to leave school because he was too disruptive. But Einstein kept learning on his own. At home, he read books on mathematics and science. He taught himself algebra and geometry at age 12. He also played the violin, something he loved for his whole life. When he was a teenager, his family moved to Italy, but Albert stayed behind to finish school. Alone and unhappy, he dropped out. Eventually, he decided to apply to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich, one of the top schools in Europe. But guess what? He failed the entrance exam. He passed the math and science sections, but failed in language, history, and geography. Even Albert Einstein failed. But he didn't give up. The next year, he tried again, and this time, he got in. At university, Einstein didn't fit in with the other students. He skipped classes. He argued with professors. He studied what he wanted in his own way. After graduating, he couldn't even get a job as a teacher. Nobody wanted to hire him. Finally, a friend helped him get a job as a clerk in the Swiss patent office. It was a boring job, reviewing inventions and typing papers. But for Albert Einstein, it was perfect. Because all day he was thinking, what if time isn't the same for everyone? What if light doesn't behave the way we think it does? He began writing down his wildest ideas. And in that small, quiet office, working a job that wasn't even in science, Einstein began developing the theories that would change the world forever. Chapter 2. The Miracle Year That Shocked the World. Albert Einstein was working quietly in the Swiss patent office. He was 26 years old, earning a small salary, wearing simple clothes, and living in a modest apartment with his wife, Mileva Maric, and their baby. Nobody knew his name. He was not a professor. He was not a scientist at any famous university. He was just a clerk, reading inventions and writing notes about them. But in his mind, something huge was happening. Every day, after finishing his office work, he would go home, take care of his baby, help his wife, and then, when the world was quiet, he would sit down and write his ideas. He didn't have a lab. He didn't do experiments. All he had was a notebook, a pen, and a brain that saw the universe differently. And then came the year 1905. This year would become one of the most important years in the entire history of science. It is called Annus Mirabilis, the miracle year. In this single year, Albert Einstein published not one, not two, not three, but four groundbreaking scientific papers. Each one was revolutionary. Each one was like a lightning bolt to the world of science. Let's understand these four papers in very simple English. Paper 1. Light moves like a packet. The birth of quantum theory. Until then, scientists believed that light was only a wave, like the waves in the ocean. But Einstein asked a different question. What if light is not just a wave? What if it's made of small pieces, like particles? He said that light behaves like small packets of energy, which he called quanta, or later, photons. This idea was shocking. It went against what scientists believed for 200 years. But it explained something very important: the photoelectric effect. How light hits a metal surface and releases electrons. This paper was so powerful that years later, it earned him the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. Not for relativity, but for this paper. And this paper laid the foundation for quantum physics, one of the most important parts of modern science. Paper 2. Time is not the same for everyone. Special relativity. This was the paper that truly changed the world. Einstein asked something strange. What if time is not fixed? What if time depends on how fast you're moving? Imagine two people looking at the same clock, but one is sitting still, and the other is flying in a spaceship at the speed of light. Einstein said, they will experience time differently. This became the famous theory of special relativity. And this idea was so bold, so unusual, so unimaginable. Most scientists refused to believe it at first. But Einstein had done the math. He had proven it. He was telling the world, time and space are not separate. They are connected. They form a fabric called space-time. This was not science fiction. It was real. Paper 3. Atoms are real, the proof they needed. Today, we know that everything is made of atoms. But in 1905, many scientists still doubted that atoms were real. They thought it was just a theory. Einstein said, "Let me prove it." He explained something called Brownian motion, how small particles move randomly in liquid, and he showed that this motion could only be explained if atoms were actually real. This paper gave strong support for atomic theory and helped modern chemistry and physics move forward. Paper 4. The most famous equation, E equals mc squared. Finally, Einstein wrote something that would become the most famous scientific formula in human history. E equals mc squared. Let's break it down. E means energy. M means mass. C means the speed of light. This equation says, mass can become energy. Energy can become mass. A small amount of mass can turn into a huge amount of energy. Because the speed of light is so fast, and you are multiplying mass with the square of that number. This was not just theory. It became the foundation for nuclear energy, atomic bombs, stars, the sun, and more. Einstein had just changed how the world understands matter, energy, time, space, and light, all in one single year. At first, most people didn't notice. His papers were published in a small German physics journal. He had no fame, no title, no money, no big university behind him. But slowly, scientists started reading his work, and their minds were blown. One professor wrote, "This man has completely changed physics." Another said, "He sees the universe in a way we never imagined." And the world began to whisper the name Albert Einstein. In the next few years, things began to change. He earned his PhD. He started getting offers from universities. He was invited to conferences. He got teaching jobs. He was no longer just a clerk in the patent office. He was becoming a rising star in science. But he stayed humble. He still dressed simply. He still loved playing the violin. He still walked to work. He once said, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." While his ideas were flying into the future, his personal life was struggling. His relationship with Mileva, his wife, was full of problems. They argued often. Einstein was busy with work, and he wasn't a very emotional husband. Eventually, their marriage broke. They separated and later divorced. Einstein continued to care for his children, especially his son Hans Albert, who would later become a scientist himself. Einstein's life teaches us something deep. You can change the world. Even if your personal life is not perfect, you can move forward, even after failure, rejection, and heartbreak. By the time Einstein was in his early 30s, the scientific world had started to recognize him as a true genius. But he wasn't done yet. He had one more dream, a bigger theory, a deeper truth. He wanted to find out, what happens when gravity and speed come together? What happens near stars, planets, and black holes? Is gravity a force, or is it something else? He began working on his next big theory, one that would take 10 years to complete. It would shake the world. Again. But before we go there, let's pause. Because 1905 was the year the world first heard the name Einstein. And everything started to change. Chapter 3. The Man Who Bended the Universe. Einstein had already done something no one expected. He changed the way people understood light, energy, time, and matter, all in 1 year. But that was just the beginning. Now he wanted to answer a much bigger question. What exactly is gravity? Why do planets move the way they do? Why does the Earth stay in orbit around the Sun? What if gravity is not a pulling force, but something deeper? He had a crazy idea. And to prove it, he would spend the next 10 years of his life working, failing, restarting, calculating, drawing, thinking, and dreaming. He was no longer a patent clerk. He had become a respected scientist. He taught at universities in Zurich, Prague, and then Berlin. But even with all his fame, he stayed simple. No big house, no expensive lifestyle. Just his notebook, his mind, and his questions. He was now chasing the most powerful idea of his life. Before Einstein, everyone believed in Isaac Newton's explanation of gravity. Newton had said, "Gravity is a force. The Earth pulls things down. The Sun pulls planets. Objects attract each other." This was the idea people believed for 200 years. And it worked. But Einstein noticed a problem. Newton couldn't explain why gravity worked. He just said, "It happens." But Einstein said, "That's not enough. I want to know what gravity is." So Einstein began thinking about something unusual. One day he imagined a man falling from a rooftop, and he thought, while falling, the man wouldn't feel his own weight. He would feel weightless, like floating in space. This strange idea gave Einstein his next big insight. Maybe gravity is not a force. Maybe it is the curving of space and time. Einstein believed that space and time are connected. They form something called space-time. And this space-time is not flat. It can bend and curve. Here's a simple way to understand it. Imagine a soft bedsheet stretched out tight. Now place a heavy ball in the center. It makes a dip. Then roll a small ball near it. The small ball moves around the dip. That's how Einstein saw the universe. The sun is like the heavy ball. It bends space around it. The Earth is like the small ball. It moves along that curve. So, according to Einstein, planets don't go in circles because they are pulled. They move like marbles rolling on a curved surface. This became his theory of general relativity, a complete new way of understanding gravity. But to prove it, Einstein needed something very difficult: math. Extremely hard math. For almost a decade, Einstein worked day and night, sometimes with help from other scientists, but mostly alone. He made mistakes. He rewrote equations. He threw away pages of calculations. He walked for hours in silence, thinking. He suffered from headaches, stress, and exhaustion. His health became weak. His marriage had already broken. He didn't have a peaceful personal life, but his love for truth kept him going. In 1915, after 10 long years of struggle, he finally finished it. A paper with just 10 field equations. But those 10 equations explained the entire universe. It was like giving the world a new language for reality. Still, many scientists didn't believe him. They said, "This is beautiful, but where is the proof?" Einstein said, "During a solar eclipse, we can see if starlight bends when it passes near the sun." Why? Because if the sun bends space, then the light from distant stars should curve around the sun and appear in a slightly different position than usual. This could only be seen during a total eclipse, when the bright sun is covered by the moon. So, in 1919, a team of scientists led by Sir Arthur Eddington went to a small island off the coast of Africa to observe the eclipse. They took photographs of the stars during the eclipse, and when they developed the pictures, they saw it. The starlight had bent, exactly as Einstein had predicted. It was true. Einstein was right. His theory was real. The news exploded around the world. Newspapers printed headlines like, "Einstein's theory triumphs," "Newton defeated," "New genius rewrites the laws of the universe." Suddenly, Albert Einstein, the quiet man who once worked in a boring patent office, was now the most famous scientist in the world. People called him a genius, a wizard, even a prophet of science. Photographers followed him. Reporters asked for interviews. He received hundreds of letters from strangers every day. He traveled to countries across Europe, America, and Asia. Wherever he went, thousands came to see him. Not just scientists, but ordinary people. Everyone wanted to see the man who changed the universe. But fame never changed him. Einstein didn't care about money or attention. He didn't buy fancy clothes or cars. He gave lectures, helped young scientists, and spoke about peace, freedom, and human rights. He said, "I want to know the thoughts of God. The rest are details." He also started speaking up about war and politics. World War I had just ended. Millions had died. Einstein hated violence. He believed in peace, in love, in understanding. He once said, "Nationalism is an infantile disease. It is the measles of mankind." He was not only a scientist, he was now becoming a voice of wisdom for the world. Even after becoming world famous, Einstein continued his deep thinking. He didn't stop with general relativity. He had a new dream. Can I find one theory that explains everything, all forces of nature? He called it a unified field theory. He wanted to combine gravity, electricity, magnetism, light, all in one big theory. He worked on it for decades, but it was never finished. Still, he never gave up. Every morning, he would sit at his desk, drink coffee, and write equations. To him, life was not about money, success, or fame. It was about understanding how the universe works. Einstein didn't start with power, money, or talent. He started with questions. He didn't give up when he failed exams. He didn't quit when teachers laughed at him. He didn't stop when people rejected him. He kept thinking. He kept learning. He followed his curiosity like a compass, and that compass led him to truths that changed the world. Chapter 4: The Final Equation: A Life Larger Than the Universe. Einstein had changed the world of science. He had given the world a new way to see time, space, light, gravity, and the universe itself. He had become a global symbol of intelligence and curiosity. But his journey was far from over. The world around him was changing fast. And now, the man who once sat quietly in a patent office was about to face the loudest, darkest, and most dangerous moment in human history. In the 1930s, the political situation in Europe began to turn dangerous. A man named Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany. He spread hatred, fear, and violence. And because Einstein was Jewish, and also because he spoke against war, he became a target. His books were banned in Germany. His image was burned. He was called a traitor by the Nazi government. It was no longer safe for him to live in his own country. In 1933, Einstein made a painful decision. He left Germany forever. He moved to the United States, where he accepted a position at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. This was not just a new job. It was a new life, a quieter life, but also a life filled with deeper responsibility. He was now living in a world that was headed toward World War II. By the late 1930s, Einstein heard terrifying news. German scientists were trying to build a powerful bomb using nuclear energy. The same energy that comes from splitting atoms, something Einstein's equation E equals mc squared had made possible. Einstein had never worked on weapons. He hated war, but he feared what might happen if Hitler got that kind of power. So in 1939, Einstein did something that still shocks the world today. He wrote a letter to the President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt. In that letter, he warned, Germany might be working on an atomic bomb, and the U.S. should begin research too, before it's too late. That letter helped start the Manhattan Project, the secret American project to build the first atomic bombs. Years later, 2 bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Einstein was horrified. Even though he hadn't worked on the bombs, he felt deep guilt for his small role. The letter. He said, "If I had known what would happen, I would have never signed that letter." From that moment on, Einstein became a strong voice against nuclear weapons. He spent the rest of his life fighting for peace, warning leaders about the dangers of war, and reminding the world, our technology has grown powerful. But have our hearts grown wise enough to use it? Einstein was not just a man of science, he was a man of conscience. He spoke up about many issues. He supported civil rights in America, standing beside black leaders like Paul Robeson and W.E.B. Du Bois. He believed in freedom of speech, freedom of thought, and education for all. He said blind nationalism and racism were dangers to human progress. He often gave speeches, signed petitions, and wrote articles to support justice, equality, and human dignity. He didn't care if his opinions made people angry. He believed, what is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. Einstein was no longer just a physicist. He had become a moral voice, a global citizen, a man who spoke not just for science, but for the soul of humanity. In Princeton, Einstein lived a very simple life. He wore old sweaters, no socks, and had wild white hair. He walked to work every day. He refused bodyguards. He answered letters from children. He hated fame, but always smiled politely when people asked for photos. He worked on one final dream: to find a unified field theory, one equation that explained all the forces of the universe: gravity, magnetism, electricity, and atomic energy. He spent years writing equations, page after page, but the solution never came. Still, he smiled and said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing." In his final years, Einstein's health began to weaken. He suffered from abdominal pain caused by an internal problem with his aorta, a major blood vessel. Doctors offered surgery, but he refused. He said, "I want to go when I want. Artificially prolonging life is tasteless. I have done my share. It is time to go." On April 17, 1955, he collapsed. He was taken to the hospital. Even as he lay in bed, he took out a pencil and paper and began writing equations. The nurse later said, even in pain, he was thinking about the universe. On April 18, 1955, Albert Einstein passed away at the age of 76. He died peacefully, alone, with a smile on his face. His brain was removed for study, but his soul belonged to the universe he loved. Einstein left behind no mansion, no company, no empire. But what he gave the world is far greater: a new understanding of space, time, light, and gravity. The foundation for GPS, nuclear energy, space travel, and modern physics. A voice for peace, freedom, and human dignity. A symbol of what it means to think for yourself and follow your curiosity. He showed the world that imagination is more powerful than knowledge. He proved that one person, with deep thought and courage, can change everything. And even today, his words live on. Let's end this journey with some of Albert Einstein's most powerful lessons, written in simple words. 1. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Because knowledge is limited, imagination goes everywhere. 2. Try not to become a man of success, but a man of value. Success is about you. Value is about what you give. 3. The world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who watch and do nothing. Stand for truth. 4. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Keep your curiosity alive, no matter your age. 5. Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. Choose understanding over violence. Einstein's greatest gift was not just his brain. It was his heart, his courage to question, and his deep belief that truth and beauty live in the universe. He showed us that it's okay to be different, that it's powerful to ask why, that one quiet voice can move the stars. He taught us how to think, how to wonder, and how to believe. And maybe, somewhere in the future, a child will look at the stars, read the name Einstein, and begin to dream again. Einstein proved that one curious mind can change the world. Subscribe for more real stories that inspire greatness.